stereotype, but let's face it, there's a certain stereotype that can come in. When we start looking at this, who typically hits this category at a higher percentage? Yeah, minorities. And we can go back now and start talking about, did the minority have access to money? Did they have access to education? And again, let's just talk education, because everybody, I would believe everybody in the United States has access to education, right? I believe that. Question is, what kind of education? Mm-hmm. Because when you go to some of these inner city schools, they're like gangland in the hallways. I mean, the teachers are there as much as security and fight prevention to keep the gangs from going after each other as they're there to teach. And most of the really quote-unquote good teachers, they don't want to go teach in inner city Chicago. There's no money in it, and they have to put up with a lot of kids that are flat out dangerous. I mean, these kids are dangerous. They know more at 16 and 17 than some of our military personnel, as far as when it comes down to tactics, weapons, and let's kill somebody, okay? So the education, the quality on the inner city is totally different than what you're going to get in suburbia USA. It is. So if all of this comes true, then in part we can answer to some degree why there might be this disparity over here. Because if we know the minorities tend to have the highest percentage of poverty comparatively to the rest of America, then we can see that. The other side of this could be discrimination, quite honestly. If I were to ask you guys, and we were being totally honest here, and we could talk totally free, and we say, what is the stereotypical criminal from TV or movies? Honestly, a lot of times it's a poor black guy. It just is. We create a mentality in our mind against minorities. Was that yours that you were talking about earlier? Yeah. Where people create a picture of a group and it's what hangs in their mind? Is that accurate? Okay, we can create that picture. And it's unfortunate because, you know, when we start having the discussion about poor and about minority and about upper class and criminality, you know, it's very easy to start throwing up race. It becomes very easy to do that. In fact, right now, that's one of the things that concerns me the most about some of the discussions that are going on in the United States, especially after the Trayvon Martin and especially after President Obama and Eric Holder, our Attorney General, got involved. Because there are groups out there that would make this into a racial issue to the degree that it's divisive, not healing, okay? I don't mind having racial discussions. I don't mind trying to fix problems, okay? I can sit here and tell you there are people out there that I think are doing nothing more than trying to benefit by playing race against each other. Mm-hmm. They're not solving problems, they're dividing, they're divisive. That's my opinion, and I'm going to stick with it. But the question that we have before us, if we want to be good citizens, in my opinion, again, it's just my opinion, then the questions before us is how do we honestly address these problems, and how do we honestly and openly have discussions to try to come up to good solutions that actually work. That's what we need to find out. And I can stand here today and talk to you all day, and so could Professor View here. We can talk all day about theoretical ways that this might be accomplished. But the truth of the matter is, it's going to be a very, very hard, long road. Okay? And this, again, this is just an opinion that I have, and I'll share it. But, you know, people as a whole tend to have their own little groups they like to hold around, and you can help me from the psychological point of view. I think it's accurate, though I can't give you terms. But basically the idea of birds of a feather flock together. I mean, everybody makes their own little group, and in history when you look out, all the little groups have always hated other groups, right? So we can sit here in the American Indians today. I'm going to pick on the Indians for just a minute. But the Sioux fought the Cheyennes and the Crow and the Apaches. They all fought each other all the time. If you weren't part of the tribe, you were an enemy. You're encroaching on my hunting ground, you're encroaching on something, you're here to steal my horses, but you're an enemy. We can go over to Great Britain back in the day, and there was the Saxons and all those other tribes that lived over in Brit. They hated each other, and they all fought. And you can go to Africa, and you can take all the different tribes in Africa, and they fought, and they still fighting today. I mean, go over to Iraq and the Muslim countries. They fought back then, and they're still fighting today. The point is simply that I'm making is this. People tend to dislike and distrust other groups other than themselves. And as such, there is always going to be that tendency, I believe, in people to want to do that. The question we have is, will we adapt as a group and as a society and as people that we can overcome that in time? And that's the story that remains to be seen. I would say that if we can't learn to talk in constructive manners and sit down where people can come together to try to find solutions, which is why I like your class so much, then we never will. I don't believe we ever will. As long as it's the politicians and the people that are out there trying to stir things up for their own benefit, then I don't think we'll ever actually solve these problems. Now, trying to bring it all back around. So, do we have disparity? Yes. In other words, do we have inequality in the system? Yes. Is it intentional, which would be discrimination? I'm not so sure about that. I think there was a time, if you go back into the 40s and before, in the 50s, yeah, it was definitely discriminatory. There's no doubt that it was discriminatory. How discriminatory is it today? Is discrimination been reduced, or is it just better hidden? People will argue that. I tend to think it's reduced, personally. Most of the people that I've been around, I've been around a lot of people, and I have a lot of people that hate me just for being a cop. I mean, I wear a uniform, they hate me, okay? It's not because they know me, it's just because they see the blue uniform. They're as discriminatory to my uniform as anything else, right? But honestly, I've just not seen race and ethnicity as part of my job. My job was always, if you had dope, if you got a gun, if you got a warrant, you're probably going to jail, okay? It doesn't matter what you look like. So, does it happen? I'm sure it does. I don't want to be naive or sound naive. I'm sure there's people, places. But I think it's what I would call contextual. It's in areas and under certain contexts. I don't think it's widespread, what's called institutional, where everybody does it, where all the cops are prejudiced, all the courts are prejudiced, all the corrections, and because of prejudice and discriminatory actions, that's why we have such a disparity. I don't believe that's the case as it is today, that like it could have been or would have been years ago. We got a long way to go. So we kind of hit some of social order, some of caste, some of status in the problems. Two other things that I want to just touch on here briefly. Does this all make sense real quick, by the way?
Yeah.
All right, so give me some feedback here. What do you all think? What questions might you have? I mean, I'm going to digress here in a little bit. Bill, what time do you need me to shut down here?
You got till 10 till.
Okay. My class can testify.
No,
I
this
can
is
talk
great.
for full time.
Don't shut down.
Okay, questions or comments or thoughts?
What do you think, being a part of that west side, always working there, do you think that maybe not consciously but unconsciously people start stereotyping? Like officers
Like me when I stereotype them. Those are West Side people?
Right. And maybe if you're on the other side, you'd overlook things because they do hide things better, but it's going on. I mean, not that you would intentionally be prejudiced, but
Right.
there ends up being a prejudice to that because it is the easiest place to find.
Mm-hmm. That's a good question, and I don't know that I can answer that. I think in law enforcement, you could become very jaded very easily because of the things that you deal with and the numbers.
How do you stop that?
Well, that's what I was gonna say. You know, for me, and this is, I have to speak for myself, there's two things that I tell officers. Number one, for myself, I believe it was God's calling in my life, okay? We do things out here, we call it the thin blue line. And you're not gonna like the terminology, but I'm gonna have to back you up for just a second to say this. Police work is a very unique little culture. It's not like too many other cultures. If you work at Phillips and you go and talk to the banker, you guys all know business. I mean, you might know oil and you might know finance, but you all are business people. So it's easy to relate to people, right? A bad day at the office is what? The price of oil dropped, your computer crashed, the Dow average went down. That's a bad day. Okay, in my office, a bad day at the office is somebody died, or somebody got mauled, or somebody was shot, or, you know, it's, and I don't want to get too graphic here because I don't want to overstep some bounds.
I don't think you could do that in this class.
I can easily sit here, I can tell you about days I've picked up body parts in Boylsville. Pieces of people from different things. I'm not going to sit here and talk to you guys in too much detail as a routine part of my life about what it was like to pick up somebody's body parts or to cut a body down out of a tree. Mm-hmm. You know, you all don't know how to process that. I mean, you've never seen a body in pieces before. I mean, you've seen TV, but I've watched people blow their brains out in front of my eyes, and I've seen pieces go everywhere. Okay? That's not something we sit and talk about at the dinner table. Okay? We can talk the Dow Jones at lunch, but nobody wants to hear about what I got to say sometimes. Because of that, cops get to be kind of a closed little group. They don't really fit. It's like they feel like they don't fit sometimes. And it goes something like this. This is the way we think to, and it's not always conscientious, and remind me to come back to my point so I don't get too stressed. So we have bad guys, right? Then we have this thin, we call it the thin blue line. And then we have good guys. And sometimes unkindly called cupcake land. Okay, so here's how this works. In life, we have good guys and bad guys. The cops exist because they are a group of people that are willing to keep this group in check so that this group can do what they want in life and enjoy their life and not have to worry about this group. They can live in cupcake land, they can be clueless, they don't have to understand how much crime there really is or what it's like, blah, blah, blah. That's okay, they can live in cupcake land because we're taking care of this part so they don't have to. Okay? Now, as such, we are neither here nor necessarily here. We don't fit in down here because we have to deal with too much of this stuff. Nobody down here wants to hear about us, what we did over here. Mm-hmm. Except on the news. Then everybody wants to know about how many people were shot and why the police are there and blah, 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 blah. Okay? So we got to get this thin blue line. It's the thin blue line that keeps the good from the bad so the good guys can go about to it. So today, when you're walking around campus, you don't have to worry too much about muggers. You don't have to worry too much about somebody, you know, jumping you in your car. You should be able to drive the streets with relative safety, and you don't have to concern yourself with bad guys coming out of the woodwork because there's a group out here that tries to keep them in check. That's basically willing to do violence and see bad things so that you don't have to. Okay? I say all of that to say that is why cops have that little bit of a kind of a closed society, because we just don't know how to talk to other people about what we've seen and done. Okay? Now, that being said, going back to how do you keep from becoming prejudiced and things like that. First of all, I believe to whom God calls, God equips. I believe that any job you do, God should call, you should be a calling in your life. I really do. If God's there, you'll be okay. He'll see you through it. You may not always know what you're doing, but He'll see you through. So Christmas, 2000, don't hold me to it, 2006, I believe, day shift, Christmas morning. If I remember correctly, we worked 4 deaths before 10 o'clock in the morning. We had a child, we had a SIDS death that morning. We had a child that had been born with a heart defect, who had been born on the outside of her body, and through surgeries they'd been keeping her alive, and she'd been kept at home. She'd turned like 6 or 7. She died Christmas morning. We had an unattended on the west side where a 40-year-old lady just died on it. Her husband woke up and found her dead on the couch. And we had a suicide in Oak Park where a guy hung himself. Okay. That was my Christmas morning. Okay, well, most everybody else is opening presents. That's what I was out doing. But you know, and I'm going to put it to you this way. I didn't have any bad dreams about that. I don't think about it today. I don't sit there and go, woe is me, you know, all the things I've been through. I've been through 2 officer-involved shootings, one of which I lost a little bit of sleep over when it first occurred. The other one, where a bad guy was shooting at me, and I shot him. I never lost any sleep on that. I don't think about it. I don't have flashbacks. I look back at my career. I had a blast. If I wasn't here today, I'd still be out there in a unit, in a heartbeat. I'd still be doing it. I love what I do. I love trying to help people. So, in part, the answer to the question is, if God calls you, He'll equip you. And He'll protect you from becoming so biased over here that you no longer can function over here. Because, see, this is where I think cops screw up. I think we tend to make ourselves so in such a tight little community that we don't know how to function out here anymore. It's like we get this mentality that we have to, you know, the only people we can ever talk to is each other. That's not true. Like my wife, I can talk to my wife about anything I do at work. It was great. One night I came home and I had stitches in my eye, I had blood all down my uniform. It had been one heck of a fight. Probably the hardest fought fight as far as just physically going after somebody and just literally, you know, going after it and hooking it up. I mean, it was somebody who was going to get beat down and that was the only way it was going to end. All right. So I come home, I've got blood all down my face, all down my uniform, and I'm thinking when I walk in the door, she's not going to be happy about this. She is not going to like this one little bit. So she looks up as I walk by, and I'm sitting going, you know, and my wife is wonderful. I love my wife. She's great. So, okay, but I'm still at this point, I'm going, oh, she's not going to be happy, you know. But she came back later and she goes, she goes, just tell me he looks worse than you and that you won. I said, yes, he does, and yes, I did. And she goes, that's all I ask of you is come home at the end of your shift. That's all I ask. And that was all was ever said. You know, but now if it was a child involved in a call, that is out of bounds for my wife. She can't handle children calls. So if I had a SIDS death or a child fatality in an accident and things like that, those things I did not talk to my wife about because I knew that those were outside of her realm of capability. The point being is letting people know what's going on. We can talk a lot. We really can. We don't have to be as closed as we are. So I think the more that officers open up and get around the community and talk with people, let people know what it's like, what's going on. It's not a secret society. It shouldn't be. But so that was part of it, is just, you know, God's grace. The other thing that I would say is I always told my guys, it's never personal, and don't take it personal. Because, all right, so I go on a call, I don't even remember where it was, but there was these 2 gangbangers off to my side, and they start making a rap tune. And their rap tune that they're saying, now this is midnight shift, I'm walking up by myself on another call, and I want to say it was a domestic, but I can't be for sure. But, you know, they start rapping out, kill the blankety blank pig. And I'm the only blankety blank pig in the neighborhood at the time. So,
qualified.
They're talking to me, right? And they know that they're going to, that basically I'm not going to be able to do a whole lot about this. You know, I could sit there and I could get mad at them. I could be, all gangbangers are alike, all whatever. But the bottom line is, they don't know me from Adam. They saw an authority figure, they saw a police uniform with a badge and a gun, which represents something, and they had something to say about it, okay? It's not personal. You know, if you take it personal, it'll become personal. You'll get bitter, and you'll get angry, and you'll want to take it out on people, because you'll think. I even had a group of, had a little gangbanger one time hunt me up at the mall. And he was one that I'd arrested, and I told my wife when I saw him coming with his buddies, I told my wife, so you keep walking. I said, head for Dillard's, and if you don't see me in a couple moments, call 911. Otherwise, I'll see you in a few minutes. He came up on me, and quite honestly, I pulled my jacket back, I showed him my gun, I said, you want a piece of me? You're going to cost you your life right here, right now. You're not going to make this personal. If you're going to make this personal, it's going to stop right here, and you're going to be the one dead. So you want it, you start it. Let's go. But we had to get to that understanding. You know, he was taking it personal because I arrested him, so he was going to get me when I was off duty, and he found me. He needed to make sure that while I wasn't going to take it personal, I wasn't going to let him make it personal either. You know, you don't come hunting me, because that changes the dynamic a lot. It's like, when I'm on the street and I'm hunting out there, that's my job, I'm doing what I'm supposed to do. When we're off duty and I'm at home and I'm with my family and you come to me, you just change the whole dynamic. So it went from impersonal to very personal. But generally speaking, don't take it personal. Mm-hmm. If you do, it will eat you up. You know, really will. So that's really long answer, probably much more than you wanted out of it.
That was really good.
But that's where I come from. And so what I try to teach the guys, and what I stress in my shift is, you know, you treat everybody just as nice as they'll let you treat them, okay? And you're gonna love them, you're gonna hate the next part, but be tactically ready to protect yourself or kill them if you have to. And again, that goes to the survival mode, because you never know what somebody's going to do. Mm-hmm. Even you can't, you know, we talk about biases. I don't care if I'm dealing with somebody here or if I'm dealing with somebody over here. If I'm telling somebody keep your hands where I can see them, and they start putting their hands in their pockets, you know what that spells to a cop? That's bad.
Yeah.
That's deadly. Because when I can't see your hands, I don't know what you're doing with them. And that's how cops die, is they can't watch the hands. So I don't care where I'm at. If I'm telling somebody just keep your hands out where I can see them, please, and they go, well, I don't want to, and they start shoving them in their pockets, it's going to get ugly. I don't want those hands in the pockets, because I don't know what's in those pockets. So my point to that is, you know, I expect officers out here to be just as professional and polite and kind as possible. You know, but if somebody starts crossing the lines for safety, then you need to have a plan, and you need to stay tactical so that you can stay on top and not die. So, you know, but, you know, again, it's just that mentality of being out there. But I'll tell you another thing, too, that you're going to find about officers, and especially, and I'll name Bartlesville. Most of us want to help. We really do want to help people. For all of this stuff that we've talked about, I can tell you one officer who worked 107, she went and bought out of her own pocket on Christmas, day before Christmas, she went to Walmart and bought 30 turkeys. And on Christmas morning, she had picked out, over the month before, she identified 30 houses in her district that she wanted to bless with turkeys for Christmas. Nobody asked her to do that, she just did it. Another officer, again, West Side, little elderly lady, drunk, got into a wreck, hit another car, plowed through her fence. Little old lady. Next day, I drove by, and my officer's over there building her a new fence out of his pocket. Just wanted to do it. I stopped a guy for speeding, going Mach 1. Come to find out when I get there, they've been living in this van. They were trying to get over to not Mary Martha's soup kitchen.
Agape Mission?
Thank you. Yes. I know that one like the back of my hand. Agape. He was trying to get over to the Agape before it closed, and they didn't make it. But he was doing like 70 in a 35 zone or 40 zone, which is way, way out of line. So, okay, I write him the ticket, knowing that he has no money to get the ticket, to pay for this ticket. So the first thing we did, is after we were all done, found out why he was speeding, found out it was a legitimate reason, found out that what they needed. I mean, I'm not trying to toot my horn, y'all. I'm just telling you, this is cops. We do this stuff all the time. This is nothing new. So I went and bought him some lunch. Took him over to a local buffet and said, "Go get you some lunch." Then I sent him over to a couple churches here in town. Said, "Here's where you can get some diapers. Here's where you can get some food. Do this, this, and this." Got him that. I left him the ticket. Now the speeding ticket I wrote him was like a $200 ticket. So I told him, I said, "If you'll show up in court tomorrow and you'll talk to the judge about the ticket, I'll appear on your behalf and ask the judge for leniency on your ticket. But you got to show up." He said he would. So okay, I called the judge. Now we're talking about, justice and whether it all works or not. But just to give you an idea, I don't do this for everybody, by the way. But you can tell people that really need and people that are filling you up with smoke, just trying to make some play on your pities. I called the judge up, told him what was up, asked him to dismiss the ticket entirely if the guy showed up. I also asked him to waive our city court costs, which is like $30 or $40. And the judge says, "Well, I feel like we ought to have to charge him something." I said, "If you'll charge him $5, would you let me pay him? Would you let me pay it?" He said, "Sure, just, So, okay, so that was the deal. So I meet the guy outside court. I gave him $5. Actually, I gave him the $5 there. Anyway, he comes into court. I showed up. I didn't have to say a word. I just told him, tell the judge your story. He tells the story. So everything handled out. The judge did exactly what we asked. He went over to the court clerk. Court clerk charged him $5. He paid the $5 that I gave him. Okay. This stuff goes on all the time. I mean, I can make this list go on and on. That's what most officers are out here wanting to do. I mean, I can tell you how many lost kids we find. We scoop them up. I don't know how many kids I wanted to take home. My wife, if we really could have, and we had the housing and the finance, we probably would have rescued 30 or 40 children over the years. We'd have lots and lots of kids. But that's just the idea. It's a mentality. We do aggressively enforce, but we do try to take care of people in the process. Two other quick things that I want to just really throw in for social problems, because it can make a problem, and we've touched on one, but one of them is discretion. What determines police discretion? Okay, you know that when I stop somebody, I'm going to use a ticket, a speeding violation, because it's an easy one. I think we've all been stopped at one point or another, right? Do you all realize that very rarely, if any, do officers, are they required to write the ticket? Okay? They don't have to write the ticket. They have all kinds of options. They can write you a ticket, they can write you a warning, they let you go. They don't even have to stop you. I mean, I can sit there, drive down the road, and I can watch 5 cars go speeding past me and just, oh well. I mean, if I really wanted to, I wouldn't be doing my job, but nobody's in my car telling me I had to go stop those cars, right? It's all on me. So what determines officer discretion? Why should you get the ticket and you get a break? Is that fair? Who gets it and who doesn't? Okay, so discretion, and when we're talking about discretion on a traffic stop, it's pretty straight up. But what do you do when you go to a drug scene and you find drugs? Do you use discretion there? Do you charge them with a felony or misdemeanor? The thing about the discretion is people say it's not fair. It's not fair. I got a ticket and he got off. I got busted on a felony charge of possession of marijuana and he got off with a misdemeanor. That's just not right. The cops have it in for me, but they let him off. I would tell you this about discretion, and going back to the tickets. For every ticket I wrote, I probably gave two or three warnings easily. I only wrote 25%, maybe 30 at the most, of all the cars I stopped. Y'all don't have a lot of money. I know that. I'm not making any money from the tickets. The city's not making tons of money off the tickets. Contrary to popular belief, our city is not financed by the tickets. That's unlawful. But I like the ability that I can sit there and say, you're having a bad day. You've been a good person. You don't have a record. I'd like to help preserve that. Just don't do it again. Versus, you who I've stopped every day for the last week speeding to school because you can't set your alarm clock on time. I'm not going to give you a break anymore. I'm going to write you the tickets. You don't listen the first time. But I like having that. I feel like it helps me to be a better human. But the flip side of that is it can appear to be biased, or it can appear, and do officers use it inappropriately? Sometimes, yes. The classical, the two classics that you hear where discretion is used wrong is he lets all the pretty girls off and driving while black. The other guy stops everybody that's black and he writes them a ticket. Okay? Those are two things where you'll hear discretion against officers all the time. Okay? Are there those out there? Yeah, there are. Won't deny it. Is it the majority? I hope not. I don't think so. I know it's not the case around here anyway. But, you know, that's where it can look bad.
What about like out-of-state plates?
I will check an out-of-state plate just because it's out-of-state. Could be a hot car moving. It depends on what you see in the car, right? So if I see a family, I'm probably not going to worry too much. I might run the tags. Do I stop the car if we're out-of-state? No. I won't. Now, if I got, you know, single occupant traveling late at night, out-of-state tag, and I've got a violation that's a light, what I call light, 5 mile an hour with speed limit, I might stop them just to see who they are, where they're going.
Okay.
But I wouldn't write the ticket on it. I'd write them a warning and say, see, you'll have a good drive and be safe. What that does is two things. Was my stop legitimate? Yes. But during day shift, can I stop every car that's going 5 mile an hour over? Are you kidding me? Nobody drives less than 5 mile an hour over. I couldn't stop them all. But at night, on a lone vehicle, yeah, I'd probably stop it, because then it gives me a chance to see, is this a traveler, or is this somebody that's, you know, doesn't look so hot? Gives me a chance to find out who they are. And if it's all good, see you. Send them on their way, you know. But yeah. Other questions? You said 10-till or 5-till?
10-till. But if you had one more thing, you said you had a couple.
I had one more thing real quick, and that's public perception, by the way. You know, how we present ourselves as officers and how the criminal justice system presents itself is oftentimes how people see the whole group rather than judging individuals. In other words, has anybody in here not been stopped by a police officer ever? Okay, cool. Okay, so everybody else, do you have a story where the cop was a jerk?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. Okay. So based on that, I would almost bet money that for a while you had a dislike or a tinge, or, you know, cops are jerks, because the guy that was there, who represents the whole group, who very distinctly, you know, dressed, acted like a jerk, and it made us all look like jerks. Okay, and that public perception persists. All we have to do is screw up one case on the stand, and it makes the whole system look bad. All we have to do is be an idiot on one stop in front of one camera, and it makes all the cops look bad because we're high profile. Okay? So again, public perception can also adjust how we view the system, and it may or may not be accurate. Okay? There are those that are jerks? Yeah, absolutely. It's unfortunate but true. And the system does fail sometimes, yes, it does. I would like to think it's getting better. I have hopes and confidence, and in part that's why I'm here teaching at this university, in hopes that, you know, to help train a new generation to do this even better than the generation that I'm coming from did it. And hopefully you guys will someday train another generation to do it even better than you all did. So anyway, I want to thank you guys very much for your time. You all have been
Thank you. Thank you. Hard to fall asleep.